from the North Beach Podcast Company in partnership with TSN. Welcome to episode 6 of season 2 of the Ray and Greg's Hockey Podcast. Real good episode coming up. We have an interview with Coyotes Chief Hockey Development Officer Shane Doan. Man, has he been a busy guy of late, not just in the National Hockey League, but dating back to the off-season where he effectively ran training skates for Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews, among some of the other NHL stars. So we'll talk to Donor about that. Lots of heat, Ray, on Ray and Greg's Twitter this past week around the cross-check to the back of Austin Matthews. The Toronto Maple Leafs complained a bit about it. Matthews didn't, but those around him did. Then people, I guess Leafs fans in general complained about it. You're not a fan of any one particular NHL team, but you didn't like it because I think, like everybody else, you thought it was a penalty that went uncalled. But
Yep.
nearly 300 comments on that particular play, and people seem to be divided.
Yeah.
But you lived it, so it's a penalty. Bottom line, right? Just call it a penalty.
The defense should be able to clear the front of the net. You should be able to move guys around. You should not be able to bury anyone with a cross check. And Dregs, I've used this example before, and it's not even an exaggeration. You'd be in front of the net, and the D would be cross-checking you just kind of on your shoulder pads, like on your back, but on your shoulder pads.
Right.
And after about the third one, the ref would yell, "That's enough." And you're like, but wait a minute, the first two were a penalty as well. There's also a safety thing here too. If you think of it, if you're getting cross-checked from behind, like on your shoulders, if you get it hard enough, you fall forward. The puck's coming from the point. Now your face is about 3 feet off the ice. There is an inherent danger to it. Look, they've got a rule book. Just call it. I understand giving some leeway. We don't want to take all the toughness out of the game, but penalty's a penalty, man. Like you got to call it.
100% agree. And look, I mean, we shouldn't expect the National Hockey League, Stephen Wacom, Colin Campbell, anybody, to call a conference call with all the referees and say, would you start calling this? It almost happens organically, doesn't it? Because, there was so much talk about that one individual play in the media. These guys, they don't tune out everything. I mean, they're hearing the same level of noise. So maybe it just happens naturally where, they just start paying a little bit closer attention to what's going on.
Yeah, but they're going to need to have some penalties handed out, or else there's no reason to stop. If you're the D, you're going to keep doing it until somebody gives you a reason not to do it. I equate it a little bit, Drakes, to the running into the goaltender. Just think of how many there used to be. Now that penalty is called every time. It's Tuesday today as we tape this. On Monday night, Kyle Connor got a running into the goaltender penalty against Toronto. And it was the right call. He should have got a penalty. And I think we see way less of those plays now than we did even 2 years ago. So I think that's what they have to do in front of the net.
Yeah, well, again, it'll continue, and we'll continue to talk about it, not just here on the podcast, but social media as well. Headlines this week, Ray, are brought to us by our friends at Legaro.com. Legaro.com Jewelers. Valentine's Day will be here before we know it. Man, is it coming quick. So get to Legaro.com for something that you know she's going to love, and let's do Valentine's Day upright. We did it upright last week, and we're going to do it upright again this week. Overall, your impression of the first week in the National Hockey League. A lot of mistakes. There's been some galvanizing moments, as we just talked about. There's been some lopsided affairs. I didn't see St. Louis getting whomped the way they got tagged by the Colorado Avalanche. But your overall interpretation, or your overall view of the hockey thus far?
Faster than I thought it was going to be. Scrambly as I thought it might be. But I think that's pretty predictable. I don't know that anybody thought that teams were going to come out of the gate and everything was going to be, playoff ready, right? I mean, the guys haven't played in forever. 10 days of training camp just isn't near enough. And in particular with the long layoff. And there's been some great stuff. We've seen some of the best players make some amazing plays already, which is always really interesting. We've
Yeah.
seen some things you can't hardly believe. And, Boston's played 3 games and they haven't scored a goal at regular strength yet. I mean, that's hard for me to believe. I watched the game on the weekend and there's Zdeno Chara sitting in a Washington jersey. And man, I thought he looked good in it, but it just looked odd.
It's weird.
Some guys go to a new team after a long time and they don't look right. Yeah, but didn't Chara look good in that jersey? I'm like, yeah, he looks pretty good in that jersey. Yeah. But it's still different.
Definitely different. Dave Tippett, head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, very, very well. And again, we're recording this on Tuesday. The Oilers have played 4 games. They've sputtered out of the gate, with the exception of the one game where Draisaitl and McDavid were just lights out good, as advertised. Would you be concerned? Would you be altering the structure because your goaltending is weak, your defense isn't as good as you were hoping it could be? Or would you be more patient and just kind of say, okay, let's just kind of polish some of the rough edges here and hope that the goaltending falls in line with the rest of our game?
Well, they in their Monday game, they made a couple of changes on defense. They took out their 2 young guys, Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones. To me, that's a more conservative approach because they'd given up just a bucket load of goals in the first couple of games. Yeah, some of that's on Koskinen, but man, Dregs, they're going to miss Oscar Klefbom. They already have, but they've got to find a way to play around it. And I don't know that they can go with the 2 young guys right now. I think Chris Russell needs to be in that lineup as kind of just a steady third pair guy. And yeah, he's not flashy, and people, analytically, they don't love the way that he plays. But I don't know that the 2 young guys right now is the best way to go, because they seem, not just those 2, but as a team, they seem to be scrambling all over the place. They give up 40 shots a night, and it doesn't matter who's in net. Marty Brodeur can be in net for you. You're giving up 40 shots. You're going to come out on the short end most nights.
Speaking of goaltenders, I didn't think that we'd be talking as much as we've talked about the third goalie on NHL teams. And, again, it's obviously COVID related, and maybe these, the National Hockey League, forewarned by what went on with the Denver Broncos and their quarterback situation, where they had a wide receiver from their practice roster come in and have to start just because of how COVID-19, hit their quarterback core. But there's been a goalie carousel, hasn't there, with that number 3 goalie, because that's a position now of importance with the pandemic.
Well, it is, of course. I think I'm going to say it's an oversight, but I don't really know how you would have been able to, to keep the current roster size and try and figure out having a goalie available. This all started, Dregs, with Corey Crawford's retirement in New Jersey. And when Corey unexpectedly retired, Jersey all of a sudden was left in the lurch. They're like, wait a minute, we don't have 3 goalies anymore. And so that started this carousel of Anton Forsberg to Carolina to waivers back, and then Aaron Dell, and some of these third goalies, these backup guys, they're going to have crazy miles on themselves by the time they ever get into a game this year. And it's so weird because they're not really in connection with their team. I mean, they get to the new team and they're still not on the ice with them. They're with the Black Aces or the Taxi Squad or whatever you want to call them. But it's an unforeseen circumstance that carries a lot of weight when it hits your team. I mean, there's been teams scrambling for 2 weeks here, and I don't really know what the answer is. You need a goalie today? Great. You bring him to your team. He's got to sit in quarantine for 2 weeks if you're in Canada. You don't need him in 2 weeks. You need him today. And there's no real way around it.
Well, one thing, speaking of goalies, that has always confused me, and maybe because of your playing life and your experience with your starting goaltenders, you appreciated the position of your head coach not naming the starter. I've never understood it, being a member of the media, and I assumed wrongly, at least for the moment, that because of the gambling influence and the money that is potentially available to the National Hockey League, that the NHL was going to step in and say, okay, well, you have to name your starting goaltender for gambling purposes. And by extension, why don't you just name your starting lineup? If it changes game time, then it changes game time. Who cares? But I'm told that's not going to be the case. And you and I have had enough conversations on this topic for me to know that that's a bit of a pet peeve of yours.
Yeah, I can't stand when the coaches don't name the goalie. The old come to warm up and you'll see. I think they just love having the control because I can tell you after playing 1,258 games, and we'll ask Shane Doan, who played 1,500 games, if you ever change your game plan because one goalie's in or the other goalie's in. You don't. The only one I can ever remember, honestly, was Marty Brodeur. And probably Ron Hextall, too, that if you dump the puck, and that was when they could go out to the corners. And, man, you dump the puck in the corner, and if it hit the boards too hard, they'd come out get it. They're better passers than half the defensemen. Boom, they're out of the zone, off it goes. So we'd adjust a bit. But it's not about shooting on the goalie. You're shooting it where he's not, right? Like you have to react. You have, they say like we don't want them to have a book on the goalies. These guys Jake Allen and Carey Price have played a combined 900 games. I'm pretty sure they've got to have a scouting book, the other teams do, on them. So I hate it. I think there will come a time when that information is just available. And you're right, Drake. The sport that has the most gambling on it is football. And everybody's trying to get information that's gambling on the games, and they're all trying to find out, is the quarterback in, is the quarterback out, is the running back in, whatever it is. And eventually you got to make your decision whether you want to gamble or not on the game, because that might change right at game time. That's the way it is. But I think in today's informational world that stuff will probably be more readily available soon. Well, I'm not saying next week or 2 weeks, but in the relative near future.
And money talks, right? Like there could get to a point where because of all the money that's in play here, Commissioner Bettman just says, "Sorry, Claude, I know you don't like naming your starting goaltender. Get over it, because there's tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in play here."
Yeah, I think it's naive to think that it's not all going to come together, and we'll end up with some regulated policy for your lineups. And quite frankly, I look forward to it, because I can't stand that line, "You got to come and watch warm up." Like really, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to wrap up headlines with this. I had an interesting conversation with the team late last week, and I'm going to touch on insider trading on this topic. But this team in particular said, revenues last year, because of the pandemic hitting in March, were down to 80%. So down 20% of what would be normal. That doesn't sound like a lot based on, the fact that the season was taken down to the knees in March. But now the projection for 2021 is 40% revenue. And that's going to change club by club. But this is a major market team I'm talking about here. And what I'm wondering is, we know the cap is going to be flat at 81.5, but that revenue number, that percentage, obviously is going to influence the appetite for some clubs to re-sign their pending unrestricted free agents or get into the market of an unrestricted free agent. Can you imagine how difficult it's going to be for some of these guys? I mean, we're coming off an offseason where there were so many one-year contracts, right? And players just hoping to hit the reset button. So now you take those players, you throw them into the market with the additional expiring contracts and 40% of revenue. It could be a real dark time for the unrestricted free agents next offseason.
Well, I would say term is in great jeopardy for almost any free agent. Somebody looking for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I can't imagine those contracts are going to be there. Certainly the number is going to come down. And we might focus on the top end guys, because those numbers are most eye-catching. But there's going to be a lot of guys that are playing for a lot less than they thought they were going to be, last March. Now, don't also forget, Dregs, is aside from, lower salaries and less term, which I think is a given, there's also escrow. There's, that gets carved off the player's contract. So the number you see is not the number you get, or the number the players get. And so this is going to be a long time. I've talked to a couple of GMs that have said, look, we're looking at 3 to 5 years before this gets back to where we were. And it might not sound like a long time, or maybe it does, but for a lot of players, that's going to be the entirety of their career.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And you look at some of the guys who are in the final year of their contract. Freddie Anderson comes to mind. What are the Toronto Maple Leafs going to do there? There's some big questions. And as you said, term is probably going to matter most to at least those veteran players who like the opportunity that they have with their existing club to win, but maybe have to sacrifice the dollars in favor of the term. Ray, our interview today is presented by our pals at coolbet.co. You can check out CoolBet's free NHL prediction pool contest for a shot at some unbelievable prizes. Chris Abbott from CoolBet will join us later in today's podcast with his NFL picks for championship weekend. As always, you've got to be 19, and CoolBet reminds you stay cool and bet responsibly. All right, pleased to be joined on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast by Arizona Coyotes Chief Hockey Development Officer Shane Doan. Doan, explain what that is. I think I've got a pretty good idea. I'm sure Ray knows more about it than me, but I mean, are you on the ice? Are you evaluating your prospects? Are you looking at your pros? Are you doing all of the above? What does a hockey development officer do for the Arizona Coyotes?
Well, as of right now, you can't really get onto the ice or do any of that because you have to be in one of the groups. I think once that's kind of all dealt with, then I'll probably be doing a little bit of that as well. But right now, it's probably a little bit more on the business side, working with Javier, the president, and then obviously I'm talking with Talk and going in and see Bill once in a while and helping out with what I can there. But I think in the end, right now, it's so hard because everyone's kind of doing a different job because you're like, hey, how can I help? What can I do?
Yeah.
And that's really what my plan is as of today.
Donor, you've been around the Coyotes since they moved from Winnipeg, and what was the decision to get involved more on a full-time basis? I mean, there's always been a thought that you need to be involved with the Coyotes. What was the step that said, yeah, okay, this is the right time for me?
You know what? I'd spoken with the Murillos. We went out for dinner last January, and then COVID and everything kind of happened, and we kind of just backed off a little bit. And when Javier came in and got involved, him and I started to get to know each other, and his view of what I think a professional team should look like was really something that resonated with me about how you can really help a community. Like a professional team should be able to help the community and make it a better place. And I started to get excited about that. And then obviously working with the league and being over at Hockey Ops was it was so much fun. And to have that experience and want to kind of bring it to the Coyotes was really what I thought that I had a chance to do that. And so that was kind of when I got probably the most excited after talking with Javier and getting to see their kind of view of what it should look like.
So the difference has to have a little bit to do, I would think, with the connection to one team, as opposed to you're at Hockey Ops and you can't really be a fan of anything. You're just at Hockey Ops, correct?
Yeah, having the dog in the fight, like the competition, the watching and I mean, my connection to the Coyotes is, I mean, it is what it is. It was the team that I wanted to be with and worked for and wanted to stay with for as long as I could. So that when the opportunity and they presented an opportunity, that was probably as much as anything was. They're like, "Would you be interested in doing this?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." So
that's not great negotiation by you, Donor.
No, you could probably do a better job than that. But I talked. You know what? I felt like I'd learned quite a bit on Hockey Ops with just the way that Coley and Murph and Kinger and Roddy they meet with people, the way that, you know, Walks kind of runs the officials and Witz kind of overviews everything on the goalies and just the overall hands-on with every club. I learned a ton of just being around those guys, and I felt like I was in a spot that I could help. And so when they offered it, I was excited to think that I could help, and that was probably the biggest thing.
I don't even know how many years ago it would be, Shane, but I live in Vancouver, and you mentioned that you always wanted to stay with the Coyotes. You were a free agent, and Vancouver came at you pretty hard. Was it really difficult for you to say, no, this is where my roots are, or did you give it a little bit of thought?
Oh, I went and looked at houses and all over Point Grey, and we did the whole thing. My wife's from New West. She was born in New West. We live in Kamloops during the summer, out on the Shuswap during the summer. So it was something. I got my brother-in-law lives in Lions Bay, and so it was something that we really thought a lot about. And I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Aquilini, and was so impressed with him and the whole organization. We just finished being in the conference finals, and we had Jans and we had Oliver Ekman-Larsson coming up, and and Smitty was just amazing. So you kind of thought, no, I'm not leaving now. Like now, when it came down to it, I was like, man, I'm not leaving now when I actually think we have a chance to be okay. And unfortunately that didn't, but at the same time, I don't regret it for a second. So.
Donor, do you allow yourself to think bigger picture? I mean, you just talked about, some of the considerations you had as a player, right? And for family decisions, you decided to stay in Arizona. Billy Armstrong just brought on board as general manager of the Arizona Coyotes not that long ago. You're part of the management staff now in Arizona. But what does the future look like, for Shane Doan? Or do you kind of just pump the brakes a little bit and just give yourself time to learn something different? No different than your approach might have been when you joined the National Hockey League and learned what you talked about inside the world of hockey operation. So in the bigger picture, what are you planning? What are you working towards?
Well, I definitely think that you need to come in not too hot. That's one thing that I've kind of learned over my career, that you tend to come in. Guys that come in hot, it seems to be a little bit hard. And I want to come in and be supportive and help out Bill and help out Javier and do the things that they need me to do to make them look as good as they can possibly be. So that's kind of my goal as of today. And I just want the Coyotes. You look at what Vinik has done in Tampa Bay, and you look at the way that he hasn't just improved his organization. He's directly improved that city, and the whole, like, the people of Tampa Bay are better off because the Lightning are in their city. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is it sounds cheesy, but you want to be able to have, instead of a professional team kind of taking, you kind of want to maybe give back instead of, and without a doubt, it's going to be, you want to have a benefits of being in a community that works and kind of flows around the whole organization, but you want to be givers and not takers. And I think the opportunity that Vinik has kind of shown, and then the Morellos, is their passion is to kind of improve the community, so that the community not just are happy that the team's winning, but happy that the team's in their city, because it helps people out. And that sounds cheesy, but I really, that would be my goal, is that we be, as an organization, something to make the city better. So that sounds bigger and lofty, but that's what it is.
Yeah, but I mean, it's an enormous vision, but there is actually a model. And does the Tampa model play into what ownership in Arizona thinks?
Without a doubt. You talk to Mr. Murillo and you talk to Javier. Like, his selling point to me was Coyote Cares. And that's really, he wants to stress that and say, like, we want to make a difference in people's lives. Like, not just come in here and obviously their goal is to make money, and obviously their goal is to create a situation that's going to be beneficial for them. But we want the people in the city and in the valley to be happy that we are here. And that's probably the biggest thing. And you look at Tampa, and it's fascinating. There's actually the Dr. Crow, who is the president of ASU. He's had kind of the same philosophy, and what he's done here in the Valley has changed ASU and turned them into this juggernaut of a university, while the whole time helping people by creating online products, and by going to different corporations and creating programs. He has a thing with Starbucks. It's just absolutely fascinating. And he's improving people's lives by using AASU as kind of the vehicle. And so you start to see that corporations can really make a big difference if it's done right. And hopefully we can do it right.
You played 1,500 games, which is just unbelievable. Anywhere on the path, did you think of management or coaching or whatever was coming? Or were you one of those guys that was just kind of, this is what I'm doing and I'm just plowing ahead?
I think that probably towards the end of my career, I thought about it. But I love to play. Like if I could go out and play right now, I'd be out on the ice goofing around having a fun time right now.
Oh, it's too hard now, though. It's too hard.
Well, they're too fast. Everyone's too fast, but it's not fair how fast they were. That probably was the biggest downfall that was very obvious to myself at the end. But man, I played last night. Like I goofed around and played in a rec hockey game last night and had a blast. Like I love the game. So without a doubt, I was aware that, the game ends for everybody. I don't care if it ends at 10 years old or at 40 years old. It ends and doesn't end. It ends at the ability to play the level that's what you think is the highest level you're capable. You have to start, backing down your expectations, which I'm doing drastically now. But at the same time, I love to play so much that it was just fun, and I always enjoyed it. Being aware that it's going to end, and is there a way that you can help the organization? I'm a big guy on relationships. I think the relationships inside a hockey club is what's the best part of it. The relationships with your players and with your training staff and the coaches and the management. I think that's so important. And for an opportunity to be involved in that, is hockey people are awesome. So I enjoy hanging out with those guys. So I always thought that maybe I'd be back involved somehow.
Okay, you said you played last night. Greg sent me this thing from one of the great characters that we played against, Jeff Odgers. And so Audrey scored a goal in a senior game. And said he went back to the bench. First thing he did was he looked up at the Jumbotron to see the goal. Of course, there's no Jumbotron. Now, were you checking yourself out on the Jumbotron?
When I was sitting on the bench one time that went into the corner, and instead of looking down in the corner, sometimes you just pick your head up to look up to see what's going on. Oh yeah, that's not there. I got to look down to see what's going on in the corner. Yeah, but it is so true. Your habits get so ingrained, and you just do the same thing over and over. Yeah, it's fun though, man. Like the game is so fun, and the guys that play it, like it's a different environment, obviously. But when you're in the dressing room, it doesn't matter. I mean, you could be in the dressing room with Mario Lemieux, or you could be in the dressing room with the guys, that you're just from your local friends, and it feels the same, and it's so much fun, and I just enjoy it. So I'll keep doing it.
Okay, so you played all this time. You're built like a cement mixer. Like when the first time I told Dregs, the first time I saw you out of your gear, I had just retired. And I was in the Arizona room, and you walked through and you had like your gray t-shirt, your shorts on. And I'm like, holy crap. No wonder I could never run into you and get anywhere. Like, did you have any injuries? Did you have any injuries that lingered on? Like, I mean, now that, are you dealing? I had to get a new knee. Like, it happens to all of us, but like, did you have anything?
I was pretty fortunate. I blew out my knee really bad in junior. So I had the ACL, MCL, and meniscus all redone the year before my draft. And when it was scary, because obviously you start your career with that was going into my draft year, which is just as a freak accident. A guy fell on my leg. We were in a fight, and he fell on it in the middle of the fight and popped it out the back, which was not comfortable, but it was never ever an issue after that. So I was fortunate. I got a shoulder that's, that doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And, you wake up sometimes and you definitely feel stuff throughout your whole body. You know what's the best part though about being retired is reaching my hands into my pockets and my hands not hurting. I didn't fight that much, but you get whacked on the hands and you get, you'd block a shot and take one and you would never miss a game for them, but you could never put your hands in your pocket. Like you go to get your keys, you go to get your keys and you're like so gingerly reaching in, or or you can't put your shoes on because you get hit in the foot with a puck, or, all those things that I'm like, man, you forget about the fact that your hands and feet don't hurt for like 9 months of the year. And then I got whacked on the finger the other night, not this game, but another game. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't want to do this. I'm not sure if I want to do this again.
No kidding. Shane, you mentioned the speed of the game now, and you had the opportunity to work with some of the quickest players, not the fastest player on the planet in this offseason. That's Connor McDavid, of course, who trained with Austin Matthews and a collection of NHL players in Arizona. You were out there varying times, helping them run drills and whatnot. You had a front row seat with high-level talent. Now, it's not game action, but still, you had to have been impressed, if not amazed at times, with that display out there day by day for a month.
I literally felt like I should be paying. Like, I should be paying to come out here. And actually, I paid for the ice, so I pretty much was paying. But at the same time, I was paying for I just wanted to hang out with NHL players. So I'm like, yeah, for sure, let's do this. But it was one of those things that you just become a fan. You become a fan of how good and how, like, stuff that I would never even have thought of doing. And then you watch them do it and you're like, maybe that's possible. Like, things that when they stretch what you can even imagine, like the guys that are that special stretch what you can even think is possible. And when someone like Connor and someone like Austin do what they do, I think it sets the younger kids in such it opens their minds up. Like, I'm talking to my son and these young guys that were skating with them at times, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, maybe I can. They're speeding up their play. And it was fascinating to watch just the speed and the quickness of what they wanted to challenge themselves with, working on their backhand. Like, they wanted to work on catching passes and giving passes on their backhand. I was like, well, I didn't even know you could catch a pass on your backhand. I just kind of would hopefully knock it down and then chase it down again. That was my whole theory, was knock it down and then chase it down. But these guys catch it and change directions at top speed on their backhand, and then stick handling it was incredible. I was a fan, and even more of a fan after watching them on a daily basis.
Their drive, their push, was that something you knew about or something you learned about?
It was obviously, every player that's I think that good, you always assume that they got that inner drive, but I didn't appreciate it and see it until you saw it on a daily basis, and their willingness. Like, I like to score goals, and everybody does that ever played the game. So it was you always assume they're going to like it. We were playing in a small area game, so inside the blue lines, and Peter Budaj was a goalie who's just an awesome dude, and he's been out there. Yeah. He's like, I understand wanting to play the game as a player, but wanting to be a goalie still after you're done being a goalie is crazy, especially with these guys shooting. Yeah. And we're in a small area game, and Connor beat a guy and slid a little slow backhand pass over to Austin. And Peter, like, Boods had been unbelievable. They hadn't scored on him in the full ice game. He was unbelievable. He had like 3 shutouts in a row in 3 different games. And Austin took a one-timer from, I would say, like 18 to 20 feet. And as hard as he can shoot it. And that man shoots a puck and hit Peter right between the eyes. Like, clean right off his forehead, where everyone dropped and just stood there and stared. Puck went off his head, hit the ceiling in our because there's a little lower thing, bounced back down, and everyone was like, oh my goodness, I think he just killed Peter. And Austin he kind of just was like, good save, Peter. And I was like, how? But he just wanted to score so badly that he didn't care at that moment. It's like, no, we haven't scored on you yet today. I'm scoring. And he's like, I said, Austin, you just about killed them. He looked at me, he's like, it hit the net. Like, I didn't miss the net. It wasn't like a shot over the net. It would have went in, and he made the save. I was like, it was so cold-hearted in that thought, but so amazing. And I was like, I'm a huge fan. Like, this is what I want to see. It was cool to see that it was funny to see Connor's reaction to it too. Like they were all like, "Oh my goodness, Austin, you literally might have killed him." And Austin was just, "Oh, yeah, I got it. So sorry about that." And Peter was like, "Yeah, no big deal at all." It was crazy. So
now, Donor can see obviously your passion for the game and what you hope to help build in Arizona. I was watching the game this weekend, and another passion of yours I saw is acting. Your
come on, Ray.
your commercial is tell me you're going to get some help from those people in the commercial to help you decorate that office. You got a phone and a banner and a shelf. You need, maybe you can put those two things together.
Yeah, not only my acting skills, but my handyman skills are rather lacking in both departments, which is really embarrassing because my daughter's actually unbelievable actor, and that's which is still horrifies her to this day that she's in the commercial because that's my daughter, the blonde girl in there, and she gets teased about it by all of her friends. And then my mom, my dad, and my brother could literally build anything. I can't do either, but it was so much fun. Yeah. I'm actually right now, I'm probably more known for my acting than I am here in Arizona than for what I did than what I did as a player.
Your daughter's most concerned that your appearance is going to ruin her career.
Exactly. That's exactly what she said. I thought that was kind of insulting, but I could see the point, I guess.
So much for her big break, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She didn't complain when I said that I'd give her half the money for doing the commercial, but now she might complain a little bit for the fact that I'm in the commercial. She's like, if you weren't in it, Dad, it would be okay. So,
how's the golf game?
You know what? It was good. Not good. I am actually pretty good on the range because I'll go and hit balls on the range with my kids, and my younger son and I'll go over and hit balls, and we'll do that probably 2 or 3 times a week. So if you watch me hit the ball on the range, you're like, not a bad player. But the guy that hits the ball on the range for me is petrified of golf carts, and he has never gotten in one. So every single time I go to leave the range, the guy that's hitting the balls for me on the range stays there, and the guy that hits it off the first tee is horrendous. And I can't figure it out. It's such a mental midget, and it bugs me so much. But I'll get it figured out at some point.
Man, sounds familiar. All right, Donor, we know you're busy. You're in one meeting, out into the next meeting, out. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us on the podcast this week.
Hey, Drake, thanks so much. Ray, thank you guys so much. I am a big fan of both of you guys. So thanks for having me on. It means a lot.
Donor, you got you're involved in something really cool there. That sounds awesome. Just want to wish you all the best, and with that vision and what you guys are trying to build there. And thanks for coming on. All the best, Shane.
Thanks, Ray. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
I go back a long time with Shane Doan, Ray. Drafted, of course, by the Winnipeg Jets, who was there for his first NHL camp. Fierce competitor from the moment he dropped into the National Hockey League. He doesn't know how to do anything at half speed, but as you and I were just talking about, perhaps his most likable quality is how likable a person he is. He is as genuine a man as you're ever going to meet.
If people listen to our pod here and didn't know Shane or weren't quite familiar with him outside of a player, you might listen to him and think, oh, he's trying really hard to be a nice guy. If you run into him at 7-Eleven or at Boston Pizza, that's what you get. Mm-hmm. Like his whole way is just the way you should be. Like it makes me feel like a schmuck, honestly, listening to him, because I'm like, everything he's doing, he's all in and committed and passionate, and he's doing it for the right thing. Like when I heard that vision that they have in Arizona, I'm like, that's the only way the Coyotes franchise is going to make a real foothold.
Yeah.
And it's a grand vision, but they have this vision from Jeff Vinik in Tampa Bay. And it's clear that's part of what they're trying to follow. I thought Shane was an awesome player. I hated playing against him because Drakes, he would run over top of you, not even really noticing, just like you were a speed bump. Because the guy weighs 235 pounds. And you just go boom, and you go right over top of you. And he scored 400 goals, and he had 900 points plus. And just an awesome guy. I'm so glad he was able to come on today.
Yeah, and full credit for a man who has stuck by the Arizona Coyotes through thick or thin. And there were tumultuous times, right? When he left to join the National Hockey League, he did it because there was opportunity to learn, not further his career, just learn. But he didn't talk about the bad stuff that he could see. Again, he had a front row seat as to what was going on with the Arizona Coyotes. Right. He was pushed outside. When the opportunity is there to come back with new ownership and whatnot, he jumps in, man, all hands on deck. And the Arizona Coyotes are a much better organization with Shane Doan involved. All right, we were joined by our good friend Chris Abbott from coolbet.co, and a lot to talk about, Chris, obviously. When you look at the National Football League playoffs that continue, there's some interesting storylines in the National Hockey League as well. But let's go to the NFL first. And we've got the Bucs, we've got the Packers. It's a classic matchup. You've got the Bills, you've got the Chiefs. Bizarre injury for Patrick Mahomes, right? Now, by all accounts, he's fine. That's what they're telling us out of Kansas City, that he's going to be okay. But do injuries, especially when you're talking about the magnitude of a player like Mahomes, are they taken into account by all the websites, by all the people who are trying to set the lines and whatnot with the gambling procedures?
Yeah, well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me back. And it's an exciting week. We're coming off last Saturday, which was actually the busiest betting day on the calendar that we foresee this year. That might get trumped by the Olympics if they happen. But yeah, the injuries are certainly taken into account. So the Chiefs opened as a 3-point favorite at home against Buffalo. That line is set presuming Patrick Mahomes will play. If he doesn't play for some reason, I expect it to go maybe 6-7 points in the other direction. He's that important. Even though, when Chad Henne's been in there, he's been fine. But yeah, it'll certainly play a huge factor. Yeah, I mean, this would not be the time I expect the NFL to be at the forefront of transparency when it comes to head injuries. Not with this week. So listen, I hope he's fine. I hope he's not pressured into playing, and I hope we get a Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen. It'd be a lot of fun.
So Chris, the people get in early on the week, and how does the line change as the weather starts to become a factor?
Yeah, I mean the both games are low spreads, 3 points each for the home team, Green Bay and Kansas City. And normally we say we allow 3 points for home field advantage. So basically the odds makers see both of these games as coin flips, which is really, really exciting. What we will see, Ray, is the total change as the week goes on. In Green Bay right now, it's set at 51. I think it opened a little bit higher than that. I think they are expecting it to be a little bit cold, maybe a little bit snowy. I think, what we've seen so far this year anyway, especially when it comes to the Packers, you can't set the totals high enough. So I actually think this is a bit of a low total for these teams. And at 53.5 for KC and Buffalo, two cold weather teams, you're not going to see a lot of guys running the ball on either side. Like, this could be a long game with each guy with like 40 to 50 pass attempts, I think. So I think both those totals are certainly under the spotlight and in jeopardy, and the weather will play a big factor. As we've seen, especially last week, when the wind is up, the kickers are missing, and how many times do you bet a total and you miss it by 3 points? So yeah, that's something to consider. Or even the point after attempt, which these guys have struggled mightily with. How can there not be 32 guys in the world that can kick a point attempt after? I don't understand it.
Such a win.
I don't have an answer, but man, moving it back has turned that has turned into way more strategy now that they've backed those kickers back. It's amazing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, you've got the 4 quarterbacks that threw for the most yardage this year. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to both of these games. I mean, what a great storyline with Brady against Rodgers, and then you've got Josh Allen, who is like Patrick Mahomes was a couple of years ago, right? So even Patrick Mahomes comes in as kind of the Jedi Master, even though he's still a kid. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be great, in fact. But you do have that showdown, right, between Rodgers and Brady. I mean, how do you establish an edge there, quarterback to quarterback. I mean, Brady always seems to have that factor, but in my mind, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the game.
Yeah, and I think this game will have a little better distribution of pass and run, because we have seen both teams, the Joneses on both teams have been able to run the ball, and they've both got a chance now, and they have over the last few weeks to establish a dual running back threat. Leonard Fournette's been a hell of a lot better. And you've seen A.J. Dillon out of Boston College start to make his mark as well for the Packers. So it's still going to come down to Brady and Rodgers. I'm sure we're not going to be watching late in the game going, okay, here comes this big run play now. It's going to come down to these two guys. I think for Green Bay, they need to get out ahead. They need to get out ahead early, because, I mean, how many times have we seen Tom Brady orchestrate a comeback late in the game? And you always got to be wary of that. The secondary for Green Bay has been better, but it's definitely their weakness. So if you leave Tom Brady any gap here, definitely be nervous if I'm a Packers fan. However, one of the things to keep in mind, and I'm betting the Packers, I absolutely love them this week. They went up against the Rams last week, and everyone said, the Rams defense will finally slow down this Green Bay team. And they didn't. Yeah. And they've played other top defenses, and nobody's been able to stop these guys this year. This game's going to come down to whether the secondary receivers on Green Bay can catch the ball, like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Equanimeous St. Brown. As long as they don't drop the passes that hit them in the numbers, I think the Packers are going to be fine.
Good stuff. Well, if we let you go, Chris, we can't end the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast without talking about hockey in some way, shape, or form. Before we started rolling here, we talked about how scoring in the National Hockey League right out of the gate in the shortened season was up. So in saying that, is it still safe to bet the over if you're looking at some of these intriguing head-to-head matchups, particularly in the North Division?
Yeah, I mean, especially in that division, I think we're going to see, and we have seen, a lot of goals. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm going to say 80 to 85%, if not more, of the games in this division have gone over the total. Now, you will see the odds makers adjust. Like, I think it's set at 6.5 for Winnipeg and Ottawa when they meet on Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. So that might be a little bit high, but they're adjusting. And then we're starting to see teams that are not scoring. Like the Bruins don't have a regulation goal yet. So I bet the under with them and the Islanders, another stingy team, and the game ended 1-0. So we're gathering data as we go, and it's been a lot of fun. But we're certainly starting to see the teams that are allowing a lot of goals, like goaltending, a huge problem in Chicago. So betting the over in those games is probably a smart thing to do, or at least bet the other team's goal total to go over. So we're gathering information as we go, and the books will start to catch up. But there's some games where you're never going to be able to set the line high enough, I think.
Terrific stuff, Chris. Thanks, buddy. Enjoy the football this weekend.
All right, gentlemen, and hopefully we talk before the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl will always you said last week was the biggest betting day of the year. Is the Super Bowl not?
The Super Bowl is massive. It's just, last week we had, there was a UFC card. The NHL was in full swing. So cumulatively, yes. Now we've got a Conor McGregor fight coming up this week, and then the Super Bowl the following week. So, it's going to be a big January for the sports books. But yeah, just in terms of everything that was going on, it was a big day. But for single events, you're looking at the Super Bowl and then high-profile fights like a Conor McGregor fight. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to your choice, heads or tails for the Super Bowl. That's one of my favorite bets, man.
Tails and yellow Gatorade. That's it.
There it is. Perfect.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Take care.
Be well.
For many people, Ray, Throat Punch has evolved into our listeners, our viewers' favorite part of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. My Throat Punch for this week is a little bit divided. I'm not sure it's a person, it's a thing, but whatever went down last Tuesday in your house to sabotage your feed gets the Throat Punch from my perspective. And here's why. Not only did we miss your cutting analysis, your keen sense of humor, your bubbling personality on the TSN NHL preview show, but in the mere minutes remaining in the 1 hour preview, I had to make predictions and projections. And I don't do predictions and projections. And so graphically, they told me.
You do now.
Yeah, I had to essentially take your predictions, which, I mean, you're probably, they look fair to me, although it's a delicate issue, right? I mean, you shouldn't in my position. Yeah, you shouldn't in my position worry about relationships and things like that, because all 7 Canadian teams in the North, we all have contacts too, right? But I think I had Winnipeg like 5th or 6th on my projection list, and I had the Ottawa.
They were 5th. They were 5th on. If they were mine, they were 5th. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
so you're gonna have to dig out of that, yeah.
We got done the preview show, and it wouldn't have been 5 minutes after we signed off, and I'm getting texts from people in Winnipeg saying, nice of you to knock the scent off of what's supposed to be a real good year for us here in Winnipeg. I'd prefer to be the underdog anyway. So whatever happened there, I don't know if it was a gremlin in your system, whatever that was, gets my throat punch this week.
Well, as it turns out, Dregs, it was an HDMI cable, which, of course, I have no idea that would have even been a problem, but, our tech department figured it out. So, yeah, thanks for stepping in there. Appreciate it. For I don't know how many times I've picked myself as a throat punch, but damn, this is getting old. I'm telling you. So, I'm in Ottawa Friday for one of my few travel games. I fly back Saturday morning. So I got to get up early, 5:30 in the morning in Ottawa. And, I get on the plane and we land, I'm 3/4 asleep still. And, I'm organized, but I'm trying to get out. So I get on the phone and I'm calling Landon, who's in Germany, my son. So we're talking, I get off the plane, I walk out, through the terminal, I get out through security. I'm 3/4 the way to the parking lot, and I realize I don't have my luggage.
What? Come on. It's an important part of the trip.
Yeah. I've left my rolly bag. I just have a carry bag. I've got my computer bag, but my rolly bag's still on the plane. So I just start howling, and Landon's like, "What is so funny?" I'm like, "You're not going to believe this, man. I left my luggage in the plane." He's like, "In the plane?" I go, "Yeah, it's in the overhead bin." So I had to go back in, get to an Air Canada representative, tell them what I did. They were super helpful. But my throat punch is my lack of travel acuity these days. I am a traveling knucklehead at this point.
But you've done it before.
That's my throat punch.
I've done it before, where you leave your laptop, suit bag. How many times have you even when you're sitting in the back, you hang your suits up front when they're nice enough to allow you to do that. I've walked off a plane probably a half a dozen times over the years and go, I might need that laptop, or I might need that suit bag.
But just think of this, Drakes. I got my computer bag over my shoulder. My phone's in my pocket. And, I got my ear pods in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't occur to me that both hands are free. Like I'm just walking like this, right? Doom, 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 and I'm not pulling anything. Like you think I would have noticed somewhere, but obviously not.
All right. Well, that's an early throat punch for yourself. You have done it before. It's not a first. Feels like it's maybe the third, maybe even the fourth time, but that's the first time in season 2. All right.
Yeah, but we're only 6 episodes in. Drakes, we're only 6 episodes in, man.
That's what I said. It's early. Ask Ray and Dregs anything. Fire your questions to us on Twitter, Instagram, @Ray and Dregs, or on our website, rayandregs.com. Ray Benjamin wants to know, how long is the leash for the goalies in Edmonton? We touched on this a little bit earlier, and you talked about the defense and just how things are. It's just a big struggle in Edmonton right now. Or Benjamin is suggesting, is he being too harsh on the goalies given the young defense in Edmonton?
Well, first of all, the leash is really long, because what else are you going to do? You don't have cap space to go get another goalie. They've got to wait till Mike Smith gets back from long-term injury, and then they've got their 2 goalies. But you can't just go make a trade. I mean, Edmonton, I think, Dregs, by the end of this year will clear about $22 or $23 million in cap space. And so if people are looking for things to change, that's probably the time to do it. But this isn't just on Mikko Koskinen. I mean, he's not been fantastic for sure, but man, they are running all over the place in their zone. It seems like everybody's trying to do everyone else's job, and while that's going on, nobody gets anything done.
All right. Devin wants to know, why is everyone so high on the Vegas Golden Knights when they haven't been able to put the puck in the net and did nothing to address that in the offseason? And how good will the Kings be in a couple of years with their good prospects coming in? So first, did we overrate Vegas, given the fact that they're not producing a lot of offense? And then we'll shift over to the Los Angeles Kings and whether you think, given their prospect pool, they are going to be a real good team in the not-too-distant future.
Well, I don't know as far as overrating Vegas. I mean, I don't know what ratings he's referring to, but I think they're a good team. I think they're one of the three best teams in the West. Alongside of St. Louis and Colorado. And I'm with you. I mean, they'd like to have some more easy scores. They have to hope Pacioretty has another good year. Stone, of course, is there full time for them. But I think probably the guy that needs to return to form for them is Marchessault a little bit. He had an unreal year the first year they were in Vegas. And he needs to score for them. He really does. But I don't know that they're overrated, really. I think people look at them as, the top third of the league, and I think that's where they belong. As far as LA, man, they had 9 guys in the World Junior Tournament 2 years ago. They had 9 guys in the tournament this year. Their pipeline is getting pretty full of prospects. Yeah. How good can they be? Well, it depends how those kids develop, right? Like they've got the potential to be an up-and-coming, young, developing team in a hurry. You just have to hope that, a third of those prospects really stick.
So it could be just, again, how early we are in the NHL regular season, but goaltending seems to be a theme of this podcast, today's anyway. Matt wants to know, who is going to get more starts in Vancouver by the end of the season? Is it going to be the young up-and-comer in Thatcher Demko, or is it going to be Braden Holtby?
I think the difference will be 5 starts between the two of them. Unless things go right off the rails and they decide to play Demko all the time to get him more time. I think Holtby will get a few more starts, but I don't think it's going to be a great difference.
Interesting. That's a good tandem, though, right? Like I heard Noodles probably a week, 10 days ago, Jamie McLennan talked about the best tandem in hockey in his mind, Carey Price and Jake Allen. Provided Thatcher Demko can be as good as we think he's going to be, there's no reason to question that, I don't think, at this moment. That's a pretty good tandem, I would say, by league comparison, isn't it?
It's a solid duo. I mean, I can't tell you which guy's going to be better than the other. And that's probably why they moved so quickly on Holtby. Once they moved on from Jacob Markstrom, they decided they couldn't get that contract done. They moved on and now you're with Holtby and Demko, and you've got a vet who looks to bounce back, and you've got a young guy that's going the other way, whose resume is growing. I think their goaltending is not going to be their problem this year.
All right, buddy. What's your week look like? I know this week it's a tough one with all the games that we're doing across the board. It's game after game after game after game.
That's pretty much it. I got games most days this week. Some Jets intermission stuff. I got Edmonton and Toronto on Friday for my first game that I'm doing off tube this year. I'll be at the studios here in Vancouver and broadcasting the Oilers in Toronto. So we'll give it a go. That's the way it is. It's the world the way it is. But be a busy week.
How's your knee, by the way? Somebody tweeted at me the other day because we didn't talk much about your knee in the last episode. Is the rehab coming along? You feeling really good?
I'm feeling pretty good to not quite really good yet. There's still some days where it's pretty achy, but I'm definitely making progress. And so the weather's been pretty good, and I'm looking forward to getting outside a little bit, maybe go hit some golf balls if under the heat if I can, because I'm still a little soft, Dregs. I'm not, I can't get out there and really grind it out, right? I got to get in the heaters.
I got it, man. I got it. Comes with age. I'm feeling it as well. We got to wrap here, right? Huge shout out to our partners who make podcasts possible. That's coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website, and Lagaro.com Jewelers. Valentine's Day, right around the corner. Lagaro.com is where you want to go to get something that she's going to love. If you're interested in partnering with us on the podcast, you can reach out as well. Visit our website, rayanddregs.com. Thanks, everybody, for following along, for listening, for watching, for rating, for sharing. Another episode in the books. We're looking forward to episode 7. In the meantime, enjoy the National Hockey League, enjoy the NFL, and stay safe, everybody.